Germany is asking for Tomahawks and Typhoon type missiles, and we know that Typhoon is 2,000 kilometers. Tomahawk
Typhoon
is
is not missile. A typhoon is the system where they stick the clam, um, the Tomahawk land attack missile, which is the missile is designed primarily to hit the ground targets. So what they do, and this is not the new one. This whole thing was also trying to be developed in during Reagan years. You stick it into some kind of launcher, this clam. For example, the clam like which is carried by the Virginia class or the Ohio class, converted Ohio class SSGNs. So yeah, you stick it into some kind of launcher and launch it. Yeah, it's about 2,000 kilometers. In reality, slightly less, but yeah, it's pretty long range. So yeah, that's what they're talking about. Well, good luck with that. I mean, so what can I say? Um, if they want to strike Russia, well, Berlin probably overlived it or expired. So they will turn it into their parking lot, and that will be it for Germany.
why does Donald Trump need to sell them to Germany? As I know, they were somehow hesitant during the even during the Biden administration about sending these long range missiles, long range weapons to Germany. But right now, with with the rhetoric in Washington that they want to put an end to the conflict, but why does Trump need to send them to Germany? Is that a long-term strategy on their part? Are they trying to irritate Russia as much as possible?
It's not irritating Russia, and there's no strategy. The Pentagon and Washington D.C. doesn't do strategy. They are incompetent. Most of people who are in power and influence in Washington are incompetent, including American generals and admirals. These are people who are good only at promoting themselves. Same goes for Trump, but he is an extreme case of narcissist, and he's simply frustrated, and he's not competent man. He's highly uncultured, absolutely non-read. I mean, he never read a book in his life, and somebody wrote this book, The Art of a Deal, for him. So he is, yeah, real estate shyster. What do you expect from the guy? And he is constantly under the influence of all kinds of be the Israeli lobby, AIPAC, and he's a Zionist essentially himself. So the guy is completely lost. And I will be talking about this tomorrow in my video. In fact, if you can go and listen to excellent conversation between Colonel Douglas McGregor and Kim Everson yesterday. Oh yeah, he just comes out and says pretty much what I've been saying for the last decade plus, that yeah, they don't do strategy, they don't understand basic things, they just absolutely incompetent. And Trump is constantly under all kinds of influences as a man with no real serious life experiences, except for being fornicating and spreading his seed all around, and having fun with whatever. So I'm not gonna go there with this idiotic Epstein files, but yeah, let others deal with this. But we already know pretty much everything we need to know about it. So what do you expect from this guy? Nothing. He was born with a silver spoon. Only imbeciles believe that he somehow has talents to develop anything. He's the son of a millionaire, for crying out loud. He inherited truckload of the money, connections, and everything. So, and you think that this guy who once said that, oh, my military boarding school for boys, everything is enough for me to know the military. Okay, so there you go. You have the nincompoop, essentially, a moron, in a White House who doesn't understand the first thing about pretty much anything. And I've been on the record, and Colonel McGregor yesterday said pretty much the same. The only thing that they're good at is how to be elected and stay elected, period. They have no knowledge of military, no knowledge of politics, no knowledge of applied geopolitics. They have no knowledge of their, you look at the American military education, it is a national shame, actually, So, but yeah, then everybody saying, oh yeah, we're the best army in the world. With generals like this, boy, who never won anything in their life. So okay, what can I say? And that's what we have, and that is why. Plus, yes, I have to state it, and I am stating this for the last year and a half at least. There is an acute case, acute of insufferable professional jealousy and envy on the part of the American military. What they are observing now and how it is done, it is so beyond their reach. All those, command staff colleges or general staff colleges, they wouldn't even pass the entrance exam to their actually any kind of the war colleges in Russia, let alone Academy of the General Staff. You have to take serious entrance exams to get there. So, and you talk about these people who are, we learned couple things, couple tactical tricks, and then suddenly we have to go out and see how we can fight with these guys. At least, the only positive thing, which is a really important shift, mental shift in the American military, for example, in the field manuals, which is the obviously Army doctrinal publication, ADP. For example, in FM 4-0, which is the sustainment operations, they admit that, in the war with the peer, and they begin to list there, which I will be talking about tomorrow. They begin to list those conditions under which they theoretically can fight. They can't, it's just out of question, but at least they now admit that there are peers there. Well, in reality is United States Army today for Russians is near peer. And the only danger of the United States is that it's inherently historically nuclear biased. It is the only nation which use nuclear bombs for the political purposes, not to win the war. And so, other than that, sure. I mean, they all bloviate, all those American generals, acting and retired. They go around, parade themselves as clowns who evidently have no clue about modern operations, which they don't. They do not understand the history, military history, because basically everything what has been taught in the United States, in the military academies, with exception of the Naval Academy, is basically confabulated fairy tales. That's what it is, And then suddenly you have those people which are the product of the system and the product of the Washington, D.C., and they come out and they observe reality, and some of them, they have cognitive dissonance, which brings about serious mental problems and psychological problems. They cannot cope. And that's what we have. And especially for the last couple of weeks, this rhetoric is completely unhinged. So, then Zakharova says, you want to try? Well, we'll just, again, if Europeans try, I mean, there are a number of the stones which need to be rearranged in Europe anyway, so, and that's what's going to happen.
I think, Andrei, what Russia is dealing with is, doesn't matter how skillful you are in the way that you're driving your car. It seems that the other cars on the road, they don't consider the law of transportation. That's why Russia needs to consider what's going on with the West. And it seems that they're not predictable. I think the problem is that you don't know what they're going to do in next step. And how stupid that move gonna be, it doesn't matter, because in their mind it makes sense. And here is what the American General Christopher Donahue.
Good Lord, Jesus, man!
He said that what he's talking. He said he noted that Kaliningrad, Russia, is roughly 47 miles wide and surrounded by NATO on all sides, and the army and its alliance now have the capabilities to take down from the ground in a time frame that is unheard of. And you see the mindset of these people, how they think.
It's
dangerous that when you hear that and you see these people could be in charge of some sort of operation against you.
No, I mean, obviously, he doesn't know the modern combined arms operations. No American general, no American serviceman knows it. They do not understand it. They cannot. American operation planning is laughable. It's conducted by clowns, basically. So you saw yourself what is happening with the special military operation, and only imbeciles believe that Russia fights only the armed forces of Ukraine or whatever is left of them. So no, I mean, he is bloviating, he's bragging, he wouldn't be allowed to command the brigade or battalion even in Russian army. He doesn't understand what modern combined arms operations are. But in the end, if he thinks that he can take Kaliningrad, well, Russians will take Washington. I mean, they will just turn it into the parking lot. So again, those people, they are not professionals. And yeah, the guy commanded 82nd, whatever, 101st divisions, and yeah, we saw how it performed in Afghanistan, all of it, didn't we? And the question was not just because Biden gave the order and withdraw. They already lost it by 2006, as famous Washington files basically demonstrate, these famous letters and communications they released about what, 5-6 years ago. So it's bloviation, he's butthurt, sore loser. He understands that the moment, again, and that's what I'm going to be talking about. United States is incapable. Let's imagine that he tries to take Kaliningrad. Well, first, Kaliningrad is stuck now with essentially one combined arms army, if he doesn't understand what it means. And then, of course, the pivot of the all-American military doctrinal thing is there used to be long-range fires. United States Army is not even in the same league as Russian armed forces in terms of long-range fires. They're simply outgunned, outmatched, and outranged, sometimes by hundreds of kilometers. So, and if he thinks that Russians don't have satellite constellation, or they don't have C4 ISR, which is actually, in terms of C4, is the best in the world, I mean, I have a bridge to sell him. But yeah, this is the guy who basically just, has a wide mouth, so to speak. And in terms of professional things, yeah, people, I know the Russians already discussed it today in the morning. They laugh at him, so they laugh at the U.S. Army. So if he thinks that he can sustain losing one brigade a day completely, TIAs, sure. The problem is United States Army is incapable of sustaining operations because this is a serious matter. And that's the whole point. But evidently, Mr. Donahue doesn't know that. I mean, he thinks that United States being not produced and having no air defense and having no ability to stop anything, ranging from Iskanders to Zircons to, I mean, hello, what can I say? I mean, let him try, see what happens. But then again, he should understand. If he doesn't, then yeah, he's a moron. But he should understand. Kaliningrad is Russian territory. If he wants to attack Russia, Russia gonna wipe the United States off the face of the earth, and that will be it. And he better understand this. But many people don't in Washington, D.C. because they are incompetent.
In terms of the talks between Donald Trump and the NATO Secretary General in the meeting, that he said that they're going to send weapons, that Europeans are buying weapons from the United States, but how much of these weapons are going to be delivered to Europeans? I think that would be important to know, and what type of weapons they're going to send to Europe. And do you see the capability of the United States producing those arms, or they're just talking about it?
No, I mean, United States tried to ramp up the production, for example, of the absolutely useless Patriot Pack-3. They were producing 1-2 a year. Now they want to produce, and some will say that 3-5 a year. Well, it doesn't matter. They will be annihilated, just more payments for the guys, Russian guys who have mortgage to pay. And, Patriot, I don't remember what is the bonus for eliminating it. Well, if they don't understand, just to give you example to have the idea what it is. Financial Times stated that Russians produced 13,000 missiles, okay? I'll give you a hint. Well, not a hint, I'll take it there. Well, it is Financial Times, it's a bunch of cretins from the United Kingdom. No, I mean, they lowered this number many, many times. So it's not 13,000, it's way more than that, okay? And this is missiles only. Now, if you go and look attentively at what Russia produces in terms of drones, and I'm talking about geraniums with a long range, 600 a day. 600 a day.
Wow.
So, then, of course, we have other types of the munitions. The United States is not even in the same league, in the same galaxy to produce anything. That's what I'm talking about. Sustainment operations and strategy. You cannot produce things, apart from them being really bad. American weapons are expensive, overpriced, and it suck for the most part. They still can kill, make no mistake. But the point is they are not designed for the war of the 21st century. United States cannot produce enough weapons to fight, to sustain operations for more than probably 2 weeks. But many American generals before, they already stated in like 2023 that we wouldn't do much better than Ukrainians if we would fight the real war. And they were writing it, and it was written for the not general public, not our hoi polloi kind of guys. No, it was stated and written this professional, some of the professional publications that, yeah, about a couple of weeks after that, United States will run out of any kind of the high precision and smart munitions and long range fires, and that will be it. So if they want to fight like this, sure. But the point is, even if United States tries to ramp it up, there are no resources, and resources are not just money. That's the whole point. Money actually is the important, very important thing, but secondary to the resources, especially human resources, ability to provide cutting-edge R&D, ability to provide the qualified workforce, and yeah, scale up, the production. They can't, because the issue is much deeper even than that. They do not think as military professionals. They know only political thing, and I can quote myself, Colonel McGregor, Daniel Davis, Larry Johnson, or Scott Ritter. The only thing they know, including those generals, is either how to get elected or how to end up on the board of some corporation to make money. They love their whatever sports cars. They dream about playing golf in some upscale club and smoking cigar and drinking scotch, expensive one, and pretend that they matter. They don't. I mean, most of them are, empty suits, hollowed out people without real serious education. Most importantly, Washington, D.C. is not culture. You have people which are completely corrupted by the all kinds of lobbies, but primarily by the Israeli lobby. They have no courage, no humanity, no human integrity. Look at this. You have the exhibit A of those people, Lindsey Graham. Now we have Mr. Trump. He is an exhibit A. He is, he is that proverbial Mencken's moron who adorned the White House finally. So, and what do you expect? And you look at the whole world, forget about just global south. They look at this, they scratch their head. We're looking at the idiocracy unfolding, after famous movie by obviously Mike Judge, which is the genius movie, We have the idiocracy unfolding in front of our eyes. We have the complete loss of expertise practically across the board. There are some islands of expertise, remaining in the United States. But this is the result of completely financializing the country, starting from Reagan years and turning it into the nothing more but the, one big laundromat and whatever, Starbucks. That's it. You have the literally people with no education. Their education in the most, not all. I want to make sure. Not all, but most those so-called humanities programs in Stanford or Harvard or Yale, this Ivy League thing and like this, or government programs of studying government and strategy in some Georgetown. It's all crap. It's all fraud. It's academic fraud. There are a bunch of morons with a PhD teach other. Well, they don't teach them. They brainwash. And as the result, you have the catastrophe. Especially in the American governance. It's militarily impotent, with the exception of the nuclear deterrent. It cannot run itself properly, utterly corrupt, basically capital of the country. corrupt and war criminal media, who always, I'm talking about establishment media. That's the result we arrived to. I remember this country for more than 30 years. It wasn't like that. And it accelerated precisely, what, during Obama. Well, it's accelerated during Bush and, after 9/11. And now the country is pretty much ran into the ground. And we look at this, horrible, barren space. It's unbelievable. It is unbelievable.
Is that achievable in your opinion by 50 days and how do you see the way that the Trump administration, you see a lot of pressure coming from Washington when it comes to the n- recent visit of the NATO Secretary General and meeting with Donald Trump and going to the way that Donald Trump is pictured in the situation, that they're talking about sanctions. But overall, when you look at the 50 days as just some sort of deadline, what does that mean for Russia?
It means absolutely nothing for Russia because it's an ultimatum. It's the logic of it is that something happens within a certain period of time, not very specified. He's talking about a deal. What's a deal? That's not diplomatic language in any case. Um, and there's a definite deadline, and negative results will occur if a deal does not materialize by then. So that's an ultimatum, and Russia does not work with ultimatums. The Russian reaction to that is, "Who the hell do you think you are?" Um, so that side of it can be completely ignored. Now, Trump's head is sort of a random number generator. So it could be 40, 50, 60, 90. Who knows? Who knows what number will come out next? But in this case, it actually makes a little bit of sense because what will happen in 50 days? In 50 days, Congress comes back in session in Washington. And what do they have to talk about? The absolute complete disaster. That's the new budget that will go into effect a month later in October. The fiscal year starts in October, and it's a complete train wreck. The budget deficit is actually just blowing up all of the finances, and on top of that, he's talking about taking direct control of the Federal Reserve by firing the Fed chairman, which is an unheard of offense against the independence of the Federal Reserve. And you have to keep in mind that there's no better way to kill the U.S. dollar than to mess with the Federal Reserve. That is the independence of the Federal Reserve, which is supposed to be sacrosanct, is the only reason that people keep lending money to the United States. They wouldn't be lending money directly to Trump. That would be ridiculous. But if Trump starts interfering with the Federal Reserve, then that's what he would be doing. So 50 days is the right amount of time for to elapse before everybody will definitely forget that the Ukraine exists. Definitely. No more Ukraine after 50 days. 50 days of nothing, of silence on Ukraine, followed by absolute mayhem in Washington, having to do with the new federal budget and also the mess with the Federal Reserve. And suddenly Ukraine just isn't even on the radar. Who cares if there's a deal or not? So that's what that means. In terms of 100% tariffs versus what the 500% tariffs that Lindsey Graham wanted. So one of the side effects of this is that Trump killed Lindsey Graham's madness. What is the difference between a 100% tariff and a 500% tariff? Well, that's like being the difference between 100% dead and 500% dead. If you're 500% dead, are you any deader? No, I don't think so. So he killed that deal. 100% is also a ridiculous number, and it's Trump again is his random number generator in his brain. The algorithm that he seems to follow in his decision making is what's called a random walk in computer science. If you don't have an algorithm for solving a problem, you just kind of randomly poke at it until maybe a number comes out. And that's what his brain is doing, I think. So he came up with a solution that A, does not deprive of the military defense uh, uh, contractors of the defense contractors, doesn't deprive them of income, at least on paper. B, Americans don't have to pay for it because it's all Europeans who are going to be paying for it, not because they don't have money. Already, all the biggest ones said they're not paying for it. C, he's not supporting the Ukraine, which his people don't want to do, but he's not supporting the Ukraine because he's willing to sell weapons, and Americans are okay with selling weapons no matter who they go to as long as they get the money. He's preserving American jobs sort of on paper again, because again, nothing will be happening. And so this is an absolute win. This is a winning scenario on all sides, as far as finally Trump comes out with something that is uh, a workable, non-workable scenario. It pretends to solve a non-existent problem by offering a non-existent solution, which is just fantastic. I'm so happy for him.
Dmitry, you mentioned that there is no difference between 100 and 500% tariffs, but I think Donald Trump learned that from the experience he had with China. If you remember, when they got above 100%, China said it doesn't make sense for us. We're not gonna go above that because that doesn't make sense. That doesn't a viable choice for us. And on the other hand, he mentioned that if he goes beyond 100%, he needs some sort of approval from the Congress. But it's up until 100%, he doesn't need any sort of permission from the Congress in the United States. But after all, do you feel that is the United States? I don't know who's behind this sort of argument, that because Donald Trump, if you remember Donald Trump before being elected in the United States, he was totally a different guy, Dmitry. He said that why do we have sanctions on Russia? What do we need to have sanctions on Iran? Why not? These sort of policies are destroying the US economy. What has happened to Donald Trump, to that Donald Trump, in your opinion? And why we are not witnessing, why we are not seeing the same guy in office when he's literally the president of the United States, but he tries to blame everything on Joe Biden right now. And that doesn't make sense for many people who voted for him, who supported him.
The United States is not a democracy, and it doesn't matter who is president. Any president, once he gets elected, gets shown a little video that nobody else has ever seen of John F. Kennedy getting killed from an angle that nobody has seen in the public. And after that, the US president-elect becomes very obedient. He basically says what his handlers tell him to do. So that's what happened to Trump. That's what happens to every US president. Basically, there's a system in place for managing US presidents, just like there's a system in place for managing just about everything else. It has nothing to do with who gets elected. That's the short answer.
When we talk about the latest visit of NATO Secretary General and his meeting with Donald Trump, in which Donald Trump said that Europeans are buying these weapons, they're gonna decide about them, but we are receiving the money, we are benefiting from the deal. Do you see any sort of responsibility on the part of the administration in Washington? Somehow, I'm not talking about the nature of the deal. I'm talking about the responsibility of those people who are providing Europe with these weapons. They know that they're going to end up in Ukraine and somewhere else to make some sort of chaos. Where is that responsibility, in your opinion?
Nowhere. It's all about money. And where's the responsibility for that? Well, yeah, if you signed a contract to deliver weapons, then you're responsible for delivering those weapons and making sure that they sort of work. Not really, but sort of. Um, but beyond that, there's no moral responsibility. There's no um, there's no responsibility to pay attention to the national interests of any country, including your own. It's just really all about money. And Mark Rutte was basically there as a a flower pot, as a decoration, because everybody knows that NATO doesn't really exist anymore. Trump has said that the United States will not defend its European allies. You're all your own, boys, and so now they're conspiring amongst each other to sort of create some kind of a NATO substitute, which explains, the action, ridiculous action between Paris and London to sign some kind of a defense or cooperation deal. All of that all has to do with the fact that NATO doesn't exist. So Rutte was there basically to call Trump daddy, and I think he's going to get a cookie or something. He looks he really just looked ridiculous, and that what was being discussed was way over his head and having nothing to do with NATO.
So what was that, in your opinion? If you believe that, what was that? What was the essence? What was the main goal of the meeting?
With Rutte?
Yeah, with Rutte. If we assume, do you feel it was all about the weapons going to Europe, or is something they were talking about something that maybe nobody was mentioning? I don't know if, because we've learned that France is not interested in buying those weapons. The only countries I assume so far they have shown that they're interested in buying those weapons are Germany and the United Kingdom. And we had a pact, a deal between the two countries, a military pact between Germany and the United Kingdom. In the new pact, they're talking about Russia as a strategic threat to them. How is that going to play out for these two European countries, in your opinion? Why do they need to picture, after more than 3 years of the conflict in Ukraine? Why do they need that? Is that some sort of agenda to drag it on, the conflict? Even
Well, no,
go
it has
ahead.
nothing to do with the conflict. First of all, the weapons in question do not exist. uh, Europe and the United States have pretty well stripped themselves of weapons. They've delivered to the Ukrainians just about everything they could. And as far as the defensive systems, those have been pretty much squandered by Israel by shooting at cheap little Iranian drones. Um, and so there's nothing to share. Now, the mechanism would be that the Europeans would give the rest of their weapons to the Ukrainians. Half of them would get blown up by the Russians, and half of them would end up on the black market. That's the pattern. And so they would be just completely defenseless and stripped bare. And then they would be allowed to order replacement weapons from the United States. Hello, here's our new pricing. Hope you like it. And our delivery dates are in 2027, 28. And meanwhile, please sit there and twiddle your thumbs or whatever, because you're not going to get any weapons from us. And so that's pretty much the plan. So that leaves Europe defenseless. They're feeling defenseless because there's no more NATO. NATO without the United States participating eagerly lacks logistics, lacks intelligence, lacks all kinds of necessary things. So it can't actually do anything, right? So these European leaders are feeling rather naked, um, and what they're facing is capitulation by the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians will eventually capitulate, they have no choice. But that doesn't really work politically for these European leaders who have thrown uh, tens of billions of dollars at the Ukrainian problem. And if what they end up with is capitulation and defeat, that looks bad for them. That ends their political careers. So they're desperate. They're grasping at straws. They're trying to come up with some kind of a solution where none exists.
In your opinion, in we know that Russia has expressed, Maria Zakharova yesterday talked about the way that European are just making coalitions, some sort of pacts, military pacts, and they're gathering. And is that a concern when they see that Germany is asking for long range missiles? It seems that the administration in Russia is somehow concerned about this sort of behavior on the part of, specifically on the part of Germany. Typhoon, Tomahawk missiles, they can hit deep into the Russian soil. But we know that, in my opinion, you have to be. It would be a pure madness to think that Germany would hit Russia deep into the Russian soil in Moscow, for example. But they can give it to Ukrainians. We know that how the situation with the Ukrainians, how they're just totally out of the hand, and nobody seems to care about that. I believe that everybody's enjoying what Ukraine is doing in terms of irresponsibility of the Ukrainian government. But how is that going to be perceived by the government in Russia?
Well, first of all, the Ukrainians can't operate this fancy long range German equipment. The Germans would be directly involved. Um, and so that would pull Germany directly into conflict. They would they would have to operate from Ukrainian soil just to have the fig leaf of, oh, it's not Germany, it's the Ukrainians doing it. But Russian intelligence is good enough to know whom to blow up. When if Bundeswehr uh, lands on Ukrainian soil and starts to regroup and gets ready to strike, first of all, most of their long range stuff is launched from planes based in the Ukraine, where all of the military airports are freshly destroyed, and flying sorties over Ukrainian territory. They wouldn't dare to invade Russian airspace. Um, and even then, they're probably going to get shut down by the Russians. So the Germans are very unlikely to do any of that, but they'll talk about any sort of absurd nonsense because the alternative is to admit the inevitable, which is the Ukraine will be forced to capitulate. Um, Tomahawks, you mentioned Tomahawk missiles.
Yeah.
Those are launched from U.S. submarines, U.S. Navy ships, Aegis ashore installations, of which there are two, one in Romania, one in Poland, and aircraft, U.S. aircraft. So if the Ukrainians are going to be provided with Tomahawks, are they going to get a U.S. destroyer to fire them? Is that the idea? Is the U.S. giving the Ukrainians a destroyer? I haven't heard anything about that, or strategic aviation doesn't seem likely. And the other thing is that the Russians are very good at shooting down the Tomahawks. Even even the Syrians in the good old days were very good at shooting down those Tomahawks because they fly slower than a passenger jet. They're really old stuff. So again, this is just all, much ado about nothing.
Is there any patience left in Russia toward Donald Trump? Do you believe that they still have some sort of hope, or maybe some sort of critical thinking toward Donald Trump, that they can achieve something with him despite all of these difficulties that they're experiencing with Washington today and these days? Is there, looking at the situation, in your opinion, your take on that would be Donald Trump is interested in achieving some sort of settlement in Ukraine?
Um, Well, he may be interested or not interested, but he is not really, how should I put it? He's not in the loop. He doesn't know what's going on, and he can't process that sort of information. He has this clip mentality where he won't read a document longer than a page, and his staff prepares little videos that they call Fox News format, which he will actually watch. That he actually has the attention span to absorb the whole thing. But his deal is his kind of like his deal mentality, what he calls a deal, is not really applicable to complicated, thorny, diplomatic missions and initiatives. So he wants a deal, and the Russians say, okay, well, this is what is in our national interests, and this is our position, and this is what we have to achieve. And that's just like, in one ear, out the other. So the Russians say, well, we have to make sure that the Ukraine is neutral, is denazified, that all the Nazis in the Ukraine are put on trial and sentenced. Okay, and we have to make sure that the Ukraine is demilitarized, that there are no foreign troops except for Russian troops, of course, on Ukrainian soil, and that the Ukraine no longer participates in any foreign military blocs or formations, no training exercises, nothing like that. Those are Russian objectives. I wouldn't call them conditions. I wouldn't call them stipulations. Russia is like this big steamroller that rolls very slowly, but everybody knows where the destination is. And Trump can't seem to process that sort of information. So he keeps talking about ceasefire, and the Russians think, well, okay, how will a ceasefire further our agenda, which is fixed? It's immutable, and that just bounces off Trump's head, and he goes back to talking about ceasefire. So, well, they didn't agree, so let's threaten them with sanctions. Threatening Russia with sanctions is pointless. Absolutely 100% pointless, guaranteed not to change Russian mentality or behavior in any way, shape, or form. Well, okay, more sanctions. Oh, that didn't work. Let's try some more sanctions. That's the level of thinking that goes on, and it's rather pointless. So the Russians are seeing that, and they do see him as a sort of like a madman bouncing around in his padded cell, not really a statesman working at achieving a diplomatic solution to a very thorny, complicated, historically conditioned problem. And the longer this goes on, the less, I guess, the lower the expectations become on the Russian side.